How to stop being worried. Like the video, give me questions, yada 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 yada. Anyway, worried. What is it? Now, these are kind of crude observations, but generally they're correct, which is that when you are worried, you are thinking about the future. When you are depressed, you are thinking about the past. Where do these things not exist? In the present moment. Have you ever heard that in a self-help book? No, because you don't read them, and that's why you watch this shitty rendition of them instead. Don't pretend you don't. We'll give you a book recommendation. Fuck you, come see a live show of mine. Then I'll give you a book recommendation. How about that? You give me money and then I'll give you wisdom. What every charlatan in history has done. And now I'm doing it. It's my turn to eat, baby. Right. When you are worried, and this is what a lot of people do when they say that, I have anxiety attacks. What are they really saying when they say that? Well, as we've gone through before, and this is the constant argument of this channel, this is like me arguing about nuclear energy on Friendly Geordies. The main point that I'm constantly stressing on this, and then you have a bunch of whiny little bitches saying that, my depression's real. Maybe your depression's real, but I would wager in most instances, you're just a whiny bitch. Sorry. Sorry. So cunty as well. Yeah, that's right, I don't want your light. But, you know, when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to depression, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, yes, these things exist. Do they exist in the quantities that they are prescribed? No. In fact, this is just peer-reviewed fact. They do not. These things get prescribed way more than they exist. And the reason is because a lot of people just because of the way that modern society works and the human brain wasn't designed for this environment. It was designed to just have cop's life, right? Long periods of boredom and then, fuck, a giant sloth. Oh God, it's running towards me in slow motion. That's what you were designed to do. You don't have giant sloths chasing you anymore. Instead, you just have a boss sitting there saying that, you know, that paper was supposed to be due by Friday. And it's Saturday now, just saying. Can't. This imaginary piece of shit in my mind. Fuck him. I do not envy anybody who has to work in an office, which is most of you. Thank you for letting me not. I don't know why you watch them so mean to you. Alright, so, in this modern environment, instead what starts to happen is because the mind kind of has this refrigerator hum of nervousness, I suppose is the best word for it. Bills, boss is mean to me. Instead of having just a constant bout of, I'm bored. None of that anymore, just this kind of low level, in a very boring, easy environment. Progress. So what usually the best way to get rid of that first off is to just meditate. Have I said that before? And the second point is that what you would be wanting to be doing in this situation, in this modern context, is making sure that you are trying to focus your mind, center your mind, just in day-to-day practice. And the way to do that is what we call fast meditating, which is that when you are feeling this kind of thing, the first thing you have to do is just, God, they learn this in special ed class in primary school. Breathe. But you should be. Every time you ever feel that, just make it a daily habit that anytime you're feeling worried or depressed, just do this. Do it now. Now! Come on. You know that there's 10% of the people watching now that are so oppositional that they're going blue in the face. Fuck you, I'm not going to breathe at all. But what you want to be doing in that breath is getting conscious. You want to be getting conscious. And why do you want to be getting conscious? Because it'll make you present. And what does being present do? It centers you. Because at this very moment, what's happening really? There's just some guy making fun of you and for some reason you're watching it. Don't know why. But mysteries of life, huh? But what happens usually is that the mind, and it usually depends on the type of person that you are, and I think it has a lot to do with body shapes, but we're getting too tree of life through that, and every time I do that, I get a little bit ridiculed, so we're not going to, but I think usually the people with, alright, let's just do it. Look, people that I think that are, you know, skinny body types, which are Vata body types, they are the ones that I think are always projecting into the future and go, But you know, like your more chubby, chunky people, your thick boys, those are the ones who are like, I'm feeling tired again, man. Those are the two ways that you kind of look at it, right? And then I think people like me that are Pitkin, which are kind of just that kind of, you know, stocky build, I guess. Just sort of like a very tall hobbit. Just us, I think usually just get pissed off. But usually the way that you avoid feeling worried or depressed is by sticking in the present moment and getting centered. So I want to talk about, that's the first strategy that we've got to be doing, right? Is just taking conscious breaths, really miniature meditations throughout the day when you're doing that. That's obvious, that's the bread and butter. And the reason it's the bread and butter is because it works. Okay, have you got that? But the other ones that I want to be talking about now, when it comes to the concept of worrying, is that if you, this is the more philosophical point that you're not actually going to practice ever, but imagine, and this I think is a Wayne Dyer point, God I love that guy. After you listen to it for 4 hours, even though he just sits there and is just like, just take it one day at a time and know that I love you. I love you too, man. He had this great line which was, if you had no self, what could you be worried about? Now think about that. If you had no self, what could you be worried about? Can you imagine how freeing it would be if you could go through an entire day without thinking about yourself? Just this observational brain floating through the ether. There's a tree out there. Cool. Green. Wouldn't have expected the leaves to be that. You're just floating through life like that. Even the concept of it. Even though it's scary, the thought of a brain floating around with a couple of eyeballs. Scary. It's also kind of relaxing. Beautiful in its own way. I think that the thing that happens is that people have a concept of self. We can delve into this more when we talk about the Eastern idea of the ego, which I think comes in and out of my life of being like, oh, that's extremely interesting to, no, that's fucking boring. And I think that that's supposed to be the way that it's supposed to be, yo. But just that idea that every time that you're anxious or you're worried, what are you thinking about? Catastrophizing how the future is going to turn out for you. The way that you get out of your head is you stop thinking about you. Because did you know that if you die tomorrow, it is not going to make a difference? There is very few human beings that they themselves, if they died tomorrow, it would have even the tiniest of impact with how the world is rotating. And you come here to feel good about yourself. But also, conversely, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that you, being alive, your whole purpose in life should be to try and improve what is here, right? So there's those two ways of looking at it, but especially if you are not thinking about how to improve the planet and how to improve, you know, the general surrounding of others, really, you dying is probably better. Face it. Give me a like, right? So what you should be doing first off is just moving towards that anyway. But the way that you move towards that is you stop focusing on yourself. So if you are ever worried, what I want you to do is think of 5 things that aren't yourself and see what happens. In fact, do it now. See what happens in your mind. And I'm just talking about anything. I'm talking about the fact that there is a car currently driving past going... Just think about that. Think about the fact that there is a guy on that car right now, probably just as worried as you, just being like, oh, fuck, which way is it? Oh, the GPS isn't working. All these things are happening around the planet constantly. The way that you feel depressed or anxious most of the time, unless you have that chemical imbalance that we talked about before, usually what is happening is you are focusing on yourself too much. And good people, people that do miraculous things in life, are the ones that have trained themselves not to focus on themselves. It is again one of these ironies of self-help, which is that by focusing on yourself, it's kind of telling you to not focus on yourself, and as a result, more people focus on you because you're focused on them. And as a result of you focusing on them, a confused face, me, myself, well, that's pretty profound shit. And as a result of you not focusing on yourself and you focusing on them, you are helping them and they will reciprocate by helping you. That is really the secret of life. And so the thing is, every time I'm ever feeling anxious or worried, I kind of just stop myself and I just think, first of all, you know, am I going to be worried about this in 10 years? You start getting all of these hippie questions. In fact, this is your homework. Write down these hippie questions. They will serve you immensely in life, not just in making you feel good for the moment, but in the long-term trajectory of your life, by making you feel good and therefore being able to focus on bigger things. And when you're focusing on bigger things, you are able to do what most people do not do in life, which is first of all focus on them, and as a result of focusing on them, you have a much better chance of accomplishing them, right? So the first one is, what am I worrying about right now? Is it going to matter in 10 years' time? That. Then I want you to just focus on 5 things. Anything, sounds, pillows, whatever is in your surrounding, anything that is external to you. I want you to focus on them and think, hang on a second, yeah, okay, I'm worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. Another self-help trope, which is that I've spent a great deal of my life worrying about things that never occurred. I think it was, it's usually Mark Twain that they're always just like, oh yes, very witty, probably him. Possible creditation to somebody who has already received more than enough praise and is dead. So, those are the 2 things that you want to be doing. Focusing on 5 things that are outside of you. I want you to be taking miniature meditation breaths. And the final piece a la resistance is that I want you to just remember this sentence. If there is no self, what have you got to worry about in life? That is what you should be using your consciousness to do, is to observe things from outside of you. Because when you do that, you start moving up in life. And the more that you do that, the more you move up. And very, very few people in life are ever able to start going on that path. So you should be doing it because it gives you an advantage. I love this about self-help. It's so good. It's so good that it kind of just teaches you this very, look, I just said it before, I'll say it again. It teaches you this very ironic way of looking at the world, which is just focus on others and you advance. It's as simple as that. And if you are worrying or you are depressed, you are not. Plain and simple. 95% of the time that you are depressed or that you're worried, you are focusing on yourself. That is the worst thing in the world to focus on. If you look at it, the worst people in the world are extremely self-absorbed. The people that are beloved by all, why are they beloved by all? Because they focus on others. Look at the difference. In fact, that's going to be the amazing turnaround of the Trump-Bernie Sanders send-off, if it even comes to that, right? Is that you have somebody who has spent their entire life focusing on themselves. Now, as a result of that, they're extremely entertaining and funny because they've just been constantly, sculpting themselves like an artwork, and as a result, he is one of the best communicators the world has ever seen. You can notice a lot of things about him, but clearly, the guy that puts fucking his name up on a building has a bit of a narcissism complex. This is self-evident. Now, look, I love the guy. I think he's hilarious, but I don't think he should be running a country. I think he should just be building more skyscrapers with his name on it. Right? But somebody like Bernie Sanders, when you see his opening statement, what does every other Democratic candidate do? Maybe with the possible exception of Elizabeth Warren, but even she says it quite a lot. Let me tell you about what I did as governor. Growing up in a small coal town, I understand how important coal is. I also understand how important jobs are because my dad had a job. How often do you hear that biographical shit from Bernie Sanders? Very rarely. Every opportunity that he has, he will just bust out those same 6 stats over and over. There are 3 families that are worth as much as the bottom 50%. I don't think that's right, right? He is focusing on everyone else. That is why he is the most popular politician in the US, and even if he doesn't win, that is not because of him, that is because of the self-serving interests of the media. That's a friendly Geordie's point, right? Here, I just want to be focusing on that one point. He is in a position where he is doing something that is phenomenal, that is bigger than becoming a president, right? He is creating a movement. He is a modern day Martin Luther King, or a modern day, whoever the fuck that guy was that The Simpsons made fun of once in America that was the head of the union movement. George Meany, that's right. How good is that? Former CFA chairman, George Meany. Let me be blunt. Is there a labour crisis in America today? Depends what you mean by crisis. That guy exists. Fun fact. So, yes, what he is doing is he is organising an entire nation of 300 million people to create a better society. Profound. Bernie Sanders, regardless of whether he becomes president or not, will be remembered by history. I don't know if Trump will. It's kind of like one of those presidents from, the 1800s where you're just like, Herbert Hoover? Who the fuck was that? Was a vacuum cleaner a president once, right? There's all of these people that just kind of come and go, but then there's real standouts in history. For instance, somebody who's going to be like that, somebody like Martin Luther King or something, who never really gained an office or any authority as such. It was kind of just people in history gave him an authority and importance because he was focusing on things that weren't him. And the more people that are focusing on things that aren't themselves, the world gets better as a result. And because the world is getting better, you get good karma points. That is where that Eastern philosophy and psychology starts to meet, bro. So, you want to be moving towards that mindset. A mindset of observation, a mindset of being out of your head as much as possible. And the way that you do that is very basic. You start off with the basic tools. You start separating yourself from it. And as a result of that, you start observing things around in your environment. And you know what normally happens a lot? That Jordan Peterson point of clean your room starts to occur when you just go, I'm nervous, people aren't being nice to me. You start focusing on things and you just look around your room and you go, maybe I should put that shirt away. And then things start to get better, miraculously. Because it's not just being like, me. Anyway, that's how I think that you should stop worrying. Let's go through it again. One more time. Make sure you like this video, give me more questions. Okay? Remember this quote. If you had no self, what could you be worried about? The second point I want you to do is miniature meditation. Write that down. Just get into the practice of taking one conscious breath. One. And then the other thing is, every time you're feeling worried, every time you're feeling depressed, observe 5 things that aren't you. Okay, I'll say it one more time, because I don't think that I get enough praise in the comments from this particular series. Even though it's like, just the nicest... Dude, it's so weird. I'm Friendly Jordy, yeah, I'm a bitch, but I get so much shit back in return, right? But on this one, it's just like, fuck you, you suck, you're a terrible person. And everyone, good on you, man, thanks so much, I'm a piece of shit, I know. So make sure that you write those comments, make sure that you like this video, and give me some more questions so I can abuse you further.